The Timeshift.
Hello and welcome to this week's review on Doctor Who. This week reviewing the episode Joy to the World. It's the 2024 Christmas special. Wahey! And we kick off this review as we always do with these reviews by talking about the writing, story and adjacently related matters. Now, this is supposed to be the grand farewell to Stephen Moffatt, a writer whom I've had many issues with in the past, and this is supposed to be his final story that he's ever going to write for Doctor Who, but hey, we heard that one before. Now, I'm not ashamed to say that on more than one occasion in the past I've ripped into his writing choices, and in hindsight I might have been a bit too far and sometimes a little bit too mean-spirited. You know, maybe it is the time of year, peace on earth and all of that, but I'm wanting to address this in a bit more of a calm, measured and responsible and grown-up way. Though with that said, I have to be frank and I have to be honest with you, dear listener. You know, I'm not going to lie about my feelings on an episode like this. I think that this is probably well, it's probably my most favourite episode that he's ever done, and quite honestly, it could be my favourite Christmas special in the entire near 60-year history of Doctor Who at this point. It hits it out the park and then some, in terms of pacing, story, mystery, character, humour and tone. It was just fantastic. This is everything that I could have hoped for with a special like this, and as I say, it might well be one of the best episodes of the Christmas specials there's ever been, and one of the best episodes of the new era of Doctor Who. And it goes to show that we can have a Christmas special that isn't having to have robot killer Santas and evil elves and all that kind of stuff. It's something that can relate into the deeper things that people connect with most around this time of year without it overplaying its hand too much. Though there are some elements that do overplay the hand a little bit too much, but we'll discuss them in greater detail later. Yes, there's some elements of it that I don't think worked quite too well. I think that some of the gags didn't quite land for me. But I think that may be just a sign of the times kind of thing, or at least a different strokes for a different throats kind of things. And there's not much that I can really in good faith criticise about this one. The fact that time travel is supposed to be this forbidden thing and only the Time Lords are supposed to be able to do it, and in the past, whenever the Doctor came across a civilization that was using time travel for some degree or another, yeah, there was almost always him being a little bit annoyed at that, but that wasn't the case here. But I can forgive overlooking a long-forgotten plot point like that for the sake of creating such a fantastic little adventure here. It takes a simple idea and turns it into this grander science fiction adventure plot. It is the idea of that thing that we see often in our lives, that extra locked door. We all come across it at some point or another in our lives, maybe not in a hotel, but maybe somewhere else. I remember that back when I was in university, when I was studying my bachelor's, there was that extra door right at the end of the corridor that no one ever opened, no one knew how to open, but it was always there. I think there was also an extra room that was attached to it that no one lived in and no one was part of, but we all joked and speculated that it might be someone else. We don't know that, we never knew that, but whatever. It's just that extra thing, that small aspect of our lives, that locked door, that door that's always there that we maybe notice once or twice and it just fades off into the background and we never think about that. And then he is able to then use it to explore the Doctor, Joy's personal trauma, and Anita's sense of abandonment. And thereafter, the pain that many of us have had of losing loved ones during the whole corona pandemic and not being able to say goodbye. It's such a simple starting off point that's able to build out into something far bigger, something far grander. It leans a lot more into fantasy than it does science fiction. Yes, it does. The idea of having a random door that connects off to other universes, it ain't new, it ain't original, but I can forgive that because at the end of the day, this is not an episode about a time hotel. It is an episode about people trying to find their place in the world and trying to find their way through the world around them. And it does it in a way which feels good-natured, high-spirited, and often fun. Yes, not as fun as I would like it to do. I would have liked, if I'm being honest, the whole fact that this is a time hotel and there are different eras to that to be explored a little bit more, to play a little bit more into that, have a few more gags with that. But I feel that given what we end up getting instead of that, that is something I'm willing to sacrifice because the quality that we do get here again, I think is rather fantastic. That whole interlude, that middle portion of the episode where it's just the Doctor and Anita was just, I'd hate to say it again, but fantastic. When I saw that starting to form, and I started to see that coming up, there's ultimately three ways I felt that it could have ended up going. It was either going to have the Doctor being restless and wacky and doing silly, goofy things because, oh no, he has to stay in one place for an extended period of time, or what's he gonna do? And whilst we do get a little bit of that of him like modifying and tweaking some of the things that they have at the hotel, he doesn't go overboard with that, that's just a side thing of everything he's doing. Or alternatively, oh, he's still going on his adventures, but now he's doing them all on Earth, and now Anita's kind of become the companion now, and they're having all these little adventures in little like montages and side scenes now. Or alternatively, as we got here, he becomes a part of her life, and she becomes a part of his life for a time. And this is something that helps both of them heal, as they both needed to be healed. They needed to have someone that they could confide in, someone that could be a part of their life for the time that they had together. They didn't need to take on wacky adventures with silly monsters in order to do that. They just needed to be there in that moment for each other to help them both heal and get over the aspects of their life that are troubling them and are holding them back. And you know, of course, which is part of why it is emotionally effective, that there is going to become a moment where the two of them have to go their separate ways. And I have to say that it gives us something that in any other story would have been the single most emotively powerful moment in the episode, save maybe the climax, and the climax would have done it in a trite way. And I know that the climax of this episode isn't to everyone's liking. I've seen that online, and whilst I can respect some of the commentary of it, some of the commentary I think is fucking stupid, but we'll get onto that shortly. But this thing that makes this work is the humanity of their relationship together that just makes it work. Like I say, it's not them going on adventures. They aren't doing overly silly and wacky things. It's them just being friends. Oh sure, maybe Anita saw a little bit more to that, but in the end that didn't matter. It was the pair of them just being there for each other to help them both heal, to give them the time to grow and reflect upon where they are in life. It gave the Doctor time to reflect and to heal after his time with Ruby and after she had left him. And I like the fact that this isn't going to be a hangover into the next season, that we're not going to have 2 or 3, or actually realistically, given that this is Russell T Davies Mark II era, a single episode where he's a bit grumpy and mardy at the fact that Ruby has left, and then, oh, he's now moved on from it largely. I'm glad that that isn't going to be the case, and we pretty much got through all of that in this episode, but we'll see where we end up going in come the next season. And we know that, well, he's likely to meet up with her again soon. The previews for the next season have come out. I don't know how much a part that Ruby is going to end up playing into all of it, but we'll soon see. But for Anita and the Doctor, the two of them found each other both when they needed it the most. It made Anita feel as though she meant something, that she had something to give to life, and that she was a human being. I don't want to get off in a tangent here, but working in those environments, working in tourism, working in tourism-related hospitality, it can be an incredibly isolating period, because a lot of people just see you as a means to an end. They see you as a little bit more of an automaton. Your job is to do X. Your job is to check people in. Your job is to book events. Your job is to do whatever, and that's all you are to them. And to be in that environment, and I speak from personal experience, it can be soul-destroying, but for that brief period of time, they were together, and it made Anita feel as though she mattered, and that she was really a human being, and again, not a means to an end. Joy and her struggles and her drama were strong, but I feel that they were underdone. I don't want to rag too much on the stuff with Joy, because I did enjoy it. I did get a lot from it, but this is me talking about the writing, and I have to say is that I feel as though that we didn't get quite as good an insight into her character, save for her trauma. Her trauma ultimately is the thing that ultimately defines her as a character. Her sadness is the thing that ultimately defines her as a character, and we don't get a greater sense as to who she really is beyond that. I think that more time was spent with all the other characters save for Joy, the titular character of Joy to the world, and it does rely heavily on real-world shared trauma, which is still fresh in the memories of many people to have the level of emotional impact that it has. I don't want to say that, and there are other reasons to why it still works, as there still is that universal point of regret of not being able to say goodbye to someone. But I'm curious to just see just how much this episode will have as much of emotional weight in 10 or 20 years' time, when the aspect of the pandemic is just largely faded from most people's memories. I mean, I still think it will be impactful, but maybe not as impactful for many people and many families when they watch it on Christmas Day. And I think that a great contributing factor as to why she doesn't feel quite as strong a character as the others is that she spends so much time out of the spotlight, and we don't get as much of a grasp on her character. Not directly, we have the little bit of a dressing down that we got from the Doctor, which we'll discuss later on, which was a great insight into her character and to why she is the way that she is, but there was nothing directly from her. There was no aspect of the character's performance, of the actor's performance, save for a bit at the start which works to the same effect as the Doctor just telling us what their character is. To the actor's credit, I thought that opening bit before the Doctor and the sci-fi stuff kicked in was fantastic, and I will talk about it in the performance section in greater detail. And some of you may think I'm insane for giving so much credit to that, but hey, study theatre, study acting, you notice these things. But the big problem with the character is that at the end of the day, so much about her character is told to us, and yes, it needed to be said for the sake of plot contrivances, but we didn't see enough of her as a character, her as an individual, to create this great connecting link to her. She just regrettably ends up feeling like a means to an end, an innocent that's been sacrificed to a greater evil that she ultimately doesn't see, because she's still so wrapped up within her own grief and trauma that ultimately the Doctor was unable to help her heal with, mostly due to the fact they didn't spend much time together and they didn't spend much time trying to get beyond that. But still, I think that her trauma is ultimately human, and there is no spin or twist on it, mostly due to the fact there is no spin or twist on her as a character. She isn't Ruby Sunday with this strange convoluted backstory. She is not any other of the companions that we've had before her. She is not like a Clara Oswald or Amy Pond, where she's this wacky, sassy, oh golly gee shucks kind of a character. She's just a very human individual. She's in the wrong place at the wrong time. She has a lifetime of baggage and self-doubt, and in the end it ends up going in a direction which I was not expecting, but I was kind of thinking that it might end up happening when, due to the this starseed thing, she ends up becoming the Star of Bethlehem, which was something I was expecting as a gag, but I was not expecting them actually to go ahead and do that, especially given Stephen Moffat's history about writing about religion and specifically Christianity when it comes to his time in Doctor Who, and I still think he's being a bit cheeky with it, in fairness, but this feels like the most respectful that he's ever been to religion, full stop. And I've seen a lot of people taking this whole thing way the wrong way, which shows that, yet again, there's a lot of self-avowed Doctor Who fans, lifelong Doctor Who fans, that don't understand Doctor Who or the people that write it, but it's a rant for a whole other time. With that said, however, let us get into the performances, and I have to say is that, look, this might be a controversial point, and I'm sure that some people may get animated one way or the other, but I think that this is Ncuti Gatwa's best performance as the Doctor to date. I mean, just this, beyond just the simple fact that he played off himself really well when we have the scene of the future and present Doctor and then the future and past Doctor meeting up with one another, I think that he played off himself fantastically well, and that is a skill and ability that very, very few actors really have, and he deserves all the credit and all the kudos and all the grazie for that. And that being the only major takeaway from this episode, I would have been fine enough to just say, okay, he did great, let's move on, but in this episode he shows a level of performative skill and performative ability that I have been sorely missing from the past season. as it takes a time for him to actually play the Doctor and genuinely feel as though he's doing that. He's not playing a pastiche, he's not playing the Doctor Who character as a product, he's playing the Doctor as a character. It has its own spin and its own feel and its still distinct tone to it, but it's inescapably the Doctor that we all know and we all love. And it has his own twist and its own flair to it. We have aspects of where he's able to do a mature warmth to the character when it needed to be there, when he needed to be there, that he could be that friend that you've always had, the character that we've always known them, to be that support for characters when they really needed it the most in their life. But he was also able to tap into that darker side of that character when Joy needed it to save her life. And that is an element that many people have picked up upon, which feels like it is a nod and an echo of the Seventh Doctor, of Sylvester McCoy's Doctor, when he would get into that darker sense, when he would get into that. And the fact that Gatwa is able to pull off these different shades and these different aspects of the Doctor's personality and not overplay his hand too much with them, not to go too far with them, not to overplay one or put too much emphasis or power behind one other than the other. He's not doing it because I want to show just how emotionally mature I can be as an actor, and he's not doing it because I want to show how dramatic and dark I can be as an actor. No, he's just doing it because this is what the scene requires of it, and he does it to the perfect level. It is pitch perfect. It hits the bullseye square on in a way which many people in the Bullseye Christmas special couldn't. That is a whole other series of events. This is Ncuti Gatwa performing at his absolute best, and he gets to play the role of the Doctor here. He's not doing it in the cartoonish way as he's been written in previous episodes. He's not doing it as the Doctor as product, Doctor as the modern era product version of it. This is the Doctor that we know. This is the Doctor we've always known, we've always loved, all the way back to the classic series. It just so happens that this is his version of it. And I'm just, at the end of the episode, I'm just thinking, can we have more like this, please? Can we have him acting more like this, please? Because this is the kind of version of the Doctor I think works really well with him. The one that can pivot between being this warm, reassuring voice that we need when things are the hardest for us, but also can still be the person that can save the day and take the steps that they don't want to take, but they know they have to take it. Whether or not that will end up being the case, I really don't know, because this is the Russell T Davies era Mark II, and I fear that he's ultimately going to pivot back into Doctor as product, but we'll see where all that goes. Now, I'm going to get the name wrong, but I think Nicola Culhan made the most of what little she had. She played Joy, and I think that, well, as I said earlier on, when I said in the writing section, everything that we saw of her before she met the Doctor, before the sci-fi stuff kicked off, was fantastic and is one of the best opening performances of any companion character, whether they be special characters or longer term ones, I think I've seen in the entire run of it. It might not seem like much, but in that short, maybe 2 or 3 minute period, she told us everything that we needed to know about her character, in a way which, I'd hate to say it, but you might not have noticed it, but your brain did. It is one of the best opening performances to establish a character that I have seen in a very long time in Doctor Who, and is just amazing. A lot of that comes down to the writing, of course. Stephen Moffat deserves all the kudos and grazies for that, but in that short period of time, we get a character that presents themselves as being bubbly and kind of cheeky, but at the same time they have this nervousness and awkwardness which shows that there's an aspect to them, a deeper element to their character, which will be explored in the episode. And they do it in such a way as though none of it feels performative. This is not the modern post-2000 awkward kind of awkwardness. I know it's not even like I'd hate to say it, but a more autistic socially awkwardness. This is just someone being in a scenario and things not quite working the way that they want to, but you know, they're going to make the best of it because you got to, because it's Christmas, and yeah, we're gonna. Oh, look, there's that door. I mean, every player has those doors, don't they? Yeah, this is. It's a great performance. I know I'm not doing a good pastiche of it, and it feels more like a gag of it. But you get the idea. You've seen the episode in that small 3-minute period. We understand everything we need with that character, and they are set up for what could have been a fantastic adventure where the character gets to discover themselves, discover who they truly are, become who they truly are deep down. But again, like I said earlier on, I think there isn't enough time spent with them to really explore their character. And that really does annoy me, because I think this could have potentially have been a wonderful character. And the element of the episode towards the end of it where she is breaking down and she's just confronting the Doctor after his attempt to get her to break from mind control stuff, and just how she's talking about not being able to see her mother again before she died. I liked the way that worked. I liked the way that it was put together, because there was no theatrics there. If you've been in the world of theatre, if you've been in the world of acting, in TV acting, radio acting, any kind, even if you've just been as a viewer, you can imagine how that kind of scene, how that kind of monologue would have turned out otherwise. It would have been them on centre stage, centre camera, occasionally cut to the Doctor reacting it, and it would just been them acting. This is their moment, this is the thing that's going to go in their portfolio, damn it. But no, it isn't. It's just an emotional, how dare you say that about me, how dare you say that about my mother, who I never got to say goodbye to. And just the sheer pain and anger that you hear in her voice as she's breaking down to the Doctor. Again, there is nothing theatric about it. It just feels human, and this is the thing that I respect the most about this episode, because it just feels so genuine and authentically human, which I can respect. I can't do anything but respective, and I think that in the interest of fairness, I think that Steph Dewalli's performance as Anita is one that could have taken an otherwise disposable character and made them memorable. She isn't a companion, despite what certain elements of Twitter are saying. She isn't a companion. She isn't written or performed like one, though she is the companion that the Doctor needed in that moment. She is not quirky, she is not strange, she is not eccentric. She is just a normal woman with a normal life, just doing her best. She isn't resentful of her position, she is not mean, she isn't disposable. She's just a human being in a human scenario, being what the Doctor needed the most in that moment, and that was a friend. And this is a kind of performance, much like the one with Joy, where you can see it being taken one way or the other. You can see it being taken to some extreme or another when they're overplayed and they're overbuilt in, and the character and the performance goes a step too far, but we don't get that. Over the period of time that we see during this little interlude, we see her gradually coming out of her shell with the Doctor, and we can hear that change of tone in her voice as we show this growing familiarity before these two characters. And that it's incredibly hard to sell a growing relationship like that between two characters in such a short period of time, because either you start off with them feeling so alien to one another and they can never be friends, and then eventually, oh, they're like best buddies, or they start off sounding like best buddies, but oh, I don't know who you are, and then oh, I know who you are by the end of it, and they're not. That doesn't happen. Again, a lot of that comes down to just how impeccably well Stephen Moffat was able to write this, but credit to the actors, they really helped to make this out. I don't think there was a single bum performance in the entire episode. I think that everyone did everything as they should have done. Everyone nailed it. I'm not going to go through the entire credit list and credit everyone, but I think this one was just a perfectly put together episode, and everyone made the absolute best of what they had, big or small. Now, with all that said, let us get into the overview. Look, it's been said time and time again, this is something that comes up in conversation in these videos, and it comes up in conversations with my friends when I talk about Doctor Who, but it has to be said, Stephen Moffat is at his absolute best when he focuses down and does simple things. To take a theme that was expressed in the Gavin and Stacey special that was later that evening, was something I watched before this. I'm not a fan of that series, but I just thought I'd put it on anyway for the sake of history. in the episode, they're at a wedding, and the registrar has their speech about love, and they talk about all the love songs that have been written and all the pieces of art that are created about it, because love is this thing that is hard to sum up, it's hard to define. And from that, love is something that's so vast and hard to define that there will never be this piece of art that sums it up. And yet Stephen Moffat, as a writer, has effectively spent his entire career of Doctor Who writing trying to define what love is. He's spent his entire career trying to define something that's indefinable. He's spent his entire career of Doctor Who trying to do these big, massive ideas, these crazy plot threads, these subversions and all that kind of malarkey, with all these big plans, but it's when he drills it all down and does something simple is when he's at his best. All the madcap plot lines of different characters here, there and everywhere about the Doctor's wife and who the Doctor's real name is and all that stuff and the Promised Land and all that pales into significance compared to the smaller stuff. He tries to do these big things, these desires to be the first to do certain things, but at the end of the day, it's simple concepts like this that do the best. His best stories are always the ones where he takes a simple idea and expands upon it just enough. He always at his best when he's not trying to rework the entire universe to make one simple idea work. He just takes an idea and runs with it as far as he could and as far as he needs to. The episode he did in the previous season, the Kaboom episode I think it was called, where it's the Doctor in a minefield, that works perfectly. Simple idea. Yes, it didn't go quite where I wanted it to in the end. Yes, it might not have been quite as good as ultimately I ended up wanting it, but it still works. And this is another case where he's able to take a simple idea, that extra room, that extra door that's always there in our lives at some point or another, and then turns it into a sci-fi adventure fantasy story, and is able to do so much more with that. He's able to make it hit notes in a way that it feels like a Christmas episode without being overly Christmassy, without it pivoting too much into robot elf, Christmas evil robot Santa things. It worked so bloody well, and in the end of the day, I'm happy that it was able to make a story that shows what he's truly capable of. This is Stephen Moffat at his absolute best. I have always had issues with certain episodes that he has written. I will always have issues with certain episodes that he's written. I will always have issues with his handling of aspects of his era and ultimately the way that it all washed out. But I can respect a man for being able to bring it when it counted. I can respect anyone who brings it when it counted. And right now, it really did count. And he even brought back a sodding T-Rex. Which long-term fans of the series of the Timeshift will know that is one of the big criticisms I had in Deep Breath all those many years ago, and there was a part of me that was half expecting that to be the one that ended up in the Thames, and if it had done, oh boy, I'd have gone wild. But hey, whatever, the perfect way to bookend it all. Stephen Moffat really did make an utterly fantastic episode, and I am beyond thankful of that. I think that it's fantastic. Now, one of the things, I will just touch upon this briefly. I don't like talking about this stuff, but I think that some of the discourse surrounding the episode, once again, is stupid. It is rock stupid. I know that I shouldn't look at comments. I know I shouldn't look at discourse online, especially with Doctor Who, because sometimes it's just so fucking stupid. But I've seen a lot of people getting pissy about how emotional this episode has been. And I just end up sitting here thinking to myself, where the fuck have you been for the past 20 years? This is what Doctor Who has been since 2005. It has been this big, dramatic, emotional, times and melodramatic thing. I may not particularly like that, but seriously? That's the thing that people are taking away from, like, of all the things to be critical of in this episode. And let's be honest, there are things about it. Just at the end of the day, I enjoyed it too much to really give a damn about those weaker elements of it. But still, I know, and in some cases it's stuff I really don't have the authority to talk about. But even still, the fact the episode is emotional, a Christmas special is emotional. I mean, Jesus Christ, what else were you watching on Christmas Day? It's all emotional. It's all emotional. It's Christmas Day, for goodness sake. And people are getting pissy that Kuti Gatwa got a little bit teary in the episode, as though Tennant didn't spend almost every other episode in his original era crying. Of all the things to rag on the episode for, this is a thing that they pick on. Ncuti Gatwa crying and the episode being emotional. Is this seriously where we are now? Are we really at the point where people are pretending that modern Doctor Who isn't something that it is just for the sake of finding to complain about? When, even though I enjoyed the episode, it still has plenty of things to be critical about. I won't go into them here now because I don't think it's within the spirit of what we're doing and we're in the wrap-up now, but still. Look, I'm not a fan of how modern Doctor Who gets so melodramatic and over-emotional, but this has been just the modus operandi now for nearly the past 20 years. There have been attempts to step away from it in different elements of it. There was something of a step away from it, so the melodrama at least in the Stephen Moffat era. The Chris Chibnall era decided to pivot even more so and do it in a bit more of a naturalistic or realistic way, well, more realistic than naturalistic way, and well, granted, that didn't pan out, but there were attempts to do that, attempts to go in that direction, but at the end, look, I'm getting a bit distracted now, but I just say that this is probably my favourite Christmas special of Doctor Who ever. I think that it was fantastic, and it was everything that it needed to be. Yes, I think that Joy is underdeveloped to almost a criminal extent as far as characters go. I still think, however, that at the end of the day, when you want an episode of Doctor Who at Christmas, you want it to be emotional, you want it to have a weight to it, you want it to connect with people. And I don't think we need robot clockwork Santa Clauses in order to do that. This is probably the most Christmas feeling episode of Doctor Who there's been in a very long time, even if we ignore the fact that there were no Christmas specials for an extended period, as at the end of the day, this feels genuinely like Christmas. This is not an adaptation of The Lion, Witch of the Wardrobe. This is not an adaptation of A Christmas Carol. This is just drilling into being there for people when it matters, being there for people at Christmas, and I think this episode is fantastic. There's not going to be a comment corner because this is a special episode and this review's gone on for far too long. I need to make sure that my microphone actually recorded this in good quality. It's a new microphone, I'm still learning how to use it. But anyway, thank you all for listening, thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye!
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!